Our next speaker is going to be Dennis McNally. I need these small print, I need my glasses. Okay, was raised in a military family and graduated high school in Maine. He received his master's and PhD in American history at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. His PhD dissertation, a biography of Jack Kerouac, which many of you know, was published by Random House in 1979 as Desolate Angel, Jack Kerouac, The Beat Generation, and America. In pursuit of his next book, A History of the Grateful Dead, he settled in San Francisco in 1977, where he has made his home ever since. He began work on the Dead history in 1980 at the invitation of Jerry Garcia. And in 1984, the Dead hired him as their publicist, a position he held for 25 years. The obligations of the job required him to put the book on hold, and he only resumed it in 1997 after the death of Garcia. A Long, Strange Trip, The History of the Grateful Dead, was published in 2002 to much critical and commercial success. He's currently working on a third book and continues to live in San Francisco, and he's also on the board of Music in Schools Today, as well as on the board of the Northern California chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union. So Mr. McNally continues to do a lot of good work for all of us. So Dennis, take it away.
I want to preface, I'm going to talk a little bit about the transition of the Grateful Dead and how it all connects, but I want to preface that by saying very briefly, just after my book came out in the summer of 1979, I went to the North Point Theater, which no longer is open on North Point in North Beach, to see an opening night. We came out of the theater and were interviewed by TV cameras for opening night of Apocalypse Now. And in that first week, they did not have conventional credits at the end of the movie. They gave you books like, I wish I kept it, like Broadway play would do. And one of the things I read with considerable interest, as you can imagine, my book was fresh out, was that Francis had optioned On the Road and several lesser known people in his scene were going to be had various roles as production in the production. Well, that was just about 33 years ago. One of the, if nothing else from tonight, give Francis Ford Coppola some due for tenacity, perseverance, and finally finding Walter Salles, who impressed me greatly. He, as many of you may know, he worked on a documentary for years before he started filming the movie, a straight film of On the Road. And in the process of that, interviewed me and Bob Weir, the Grateful Dead, about Neil, who Bob was extremely touched by in his life. I got a doctorate in history, not literature, and I went to Kerouac in large part after learning a little bit more about him, because I realized that he made a perfect lens into looking at American history in his lifetime. That he, in some ways, was a diarist, but just that his level of experience was so reflective of the times, and resisting, and frankly, mostly resisting the times, resisting the sort of deadening aspects of post-World War II America. You've got a World War, before that a Depression, now a Cold War, McCarthyism, a lot of things, all of which contributed to repressing a lot of things, and he fought that. The single thing that people ask me, well, what did you take out of Kerouac, was the fact that he was prepared to commit literary suicide, which is to say, he published a book, The Town and the City, got good reviews, was relatively conventional in form, and it didn't satisfy him, and he went beyond, and he started writing things, the best of which, for my money, is something called Visions of Cody, different chunks of that. And it's brilliant, and some of it's madness, and some of it's shapeless, but he wasn't satisfied, and he kept going. And he, for a long time, assumed that he would never be published, and some of the luck of the draw that caused him finally to be published, it was just coincidence, because what he was doing in On the Road was so antithetical to what was going on in American culture. And one other very brief story, which is that what made, to a large extent, to a considerable extent, the fortunes of On the Road was a review by a guy named Gilbert Milstein in the New York Times, which declared it a generational document, compared it to The Sun Also Rises, etc. Luck of the draw. The regular reviewer was on vacation. Gilbert Milstein got the assignment against all odds. They called, it was Orville, and his nickname was Prissy, so you can imagine what he would have done with On the Road. Orville Prescott was the regular reviewer at that time, but Gilbert got the job and gave it that kind of review, and On the Road never stopped. Briefly, the same person that encouraged me told me all of his letters are at Columbia, which turned out, as Jerry will tell you, not quite to be true, but it was a start. The guy who encouraged me to do a book about, I was sort of saying, I'd like to study the most recent past, the beats, and so it was very vague, and he said, no, you should do Kerouac. All of his papers are at Columbia. And I went, oh, well, that sounds good. And coincidentally, my parents had moved 20 miles from Lowell just at that time, so things were shaping up. The same person took me to my first Grateful Dead concert and put the first hit of acid in my mouth. I owe him a few things. And about a year or two into the Kerouac book, I had a revelation, which was, if you wanted to write a 2-volume history of Bohemia after World War II, through the life of Kerouac in the 40s and 50s, and the Grateful Dead in the 60s and 70s, and because I was very, very slow, I threw in the 80s and 90s as a bonus. This is what you could do. And I didn't really plan on taking 30 years, but that's what I ended up doing. The reason it worked, and I'll finish with this, the reason it worked is Jerry Garcia had the same idea, basically. Jerry, On the Road was a primal document to him. He said to me a number of times that, it was his role model for the rest of his life. I always think he was taking classes at Saturday classes at the San Francisco Art Institute from a man named Wally Hedrick. Wally Hedrick was a genuine beat, was involved in the Sixth Gallery, which, of course, where Ginsberg read Howl for the first time. Another good movie, by the way, in case you haven't seen it, the movie Howl. Wally said to Jerry, who was like 16, 17, you're more beat than I am. Go down to City Lights bookstore and get this book. I never asked, God knows why. I always figured Jerry shoplifted it. But it changed his life. And when I sort of turned up and he read the Desolate Angel, the Kerouac book, he said, well, all I know is you share my prejudices, sort of biases, why don't you do us? And it made sense to him, and it made sense to me, and there you go.